All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Actual Anarchy podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian Anarcho-capitalist perspective. My name is Daniel. My co-host is Robert, and we're going to talk about Star Trek Beyond today. We also have a special guest we'll be introducing in a moment. But before we get to that, let's say hello to Robert. How are you, sir?
Hello, my fluffy freedom lovers. How are you doing this evening, this day, this whatever it is when you happen to be listening to this some time in the far-flung future? And today we're going into the far-flung future. So we're boldly going. It's going to be exciting. We're going to have this chime of our Vulcan lives. Doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. We've been doing lots of work on the site, lots of updates, updated the contact about podcast page, added a quotes page, also updated the artwork on the YouTube channel. So if you guys like us at all, or even if you don't, if there's any way we can bribe you into this, go and subscribe to us at the YouTube channel. There's links all over our site. We need to get over 100 people subscribed, and then we can get our custom URL. I'm really pushing for that. We've also started a private, closed, Actual Anarchy group on the Facebook, so you can say whatever you wish in there, and it won't leak out, not easily anyway. And our guest is actually in there as well. And Robert, why don't we say who our guest is?
I only know him by his first name, and I don't even know if that's a pseudonym or not. He's supposedly twice our age, so he's an old, teetering, tottering, forgetful old man. He's like 80. And so be nice to him. And his name is Mark, or at least that's what he calls himself. If that's his real name, I have no idea. But he's a super old style old man. So be nice to him. Everybody welcome Mark, everybody. Hey,
yeah,
Mark.
That's right. This is Mark Deerdorf. He comes to us from scienceviamarkets.com. He writes sci-fi and on science topics and about how the market is related to that, free market principles. He's been shooting the shit with us for about an hour already. We've been laughing and cracking it up, and we figured we might as well just start the show. So, Mark, how are you doing, sir? Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Mark E. Deerdorf. I was born and raised in California, SoCal, born in beautiful downtown Burbank. For those of you old enough to remember the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, my mother was born in California, in the Central Valley, or actually in Hanford, California. She ended up by the coast, then down into the LA area. My dad moved from Pennsylvania in the Air Force. He flew over Germany, the navigator, B-17s, dropping bombs on the fatherland, and then out to California. Actually, before we started dropping the bombs, they got married down in Texas, and then I was born in 1953, so I'll be 64 in a month and a half in June. I went to university.
We'll still love you. We'll still love you when you're 64.
I understand. Okay. I'll be another 5 years. I'll be my favorite age is my favorite number, 69. So anyway, I'm married, have 2 adult children. I moved here to Minnesota when I was 63, just almost on my 63rd birthday. My son moved here 10 years ago because he could not afford a home in San Diego, where the starter house is about $300 and some thousand for maybe 1,200 square feet. unless you live about 60 or 70 miles from town and want to make that commute. So we moved back here, and my daughter and her husband will be moving here next fall. He's a gunsmith, which makes him a perfect candidate for living in Minnesota, where we may actually have a constitutional carry law. My wife and I just picked up our carry permits, and we'll now have reciprocity in about, 40-some states. So be careful around us, okay? We are trigger happy.
So, Mark, thanks for the old background there, the early part of the story. What kind of projects are you working on now? What do you talk about on your website? And I think you mentioned you're working on a book.
Yeah, well, I'm an engineer by profession, and I have degrees in engineering and economics. I'm also a seismologist. Since I retired, though I still do some consulting, I've decided to devote my time to writing and informing people about the realities of science. There are too many people who are lost in the prima donna credulity of Hollywood and believing things which are highly unlikely, if not damn impossible, particularly around modern cinema and television fiction about science, things like the Star Trek universe and, of course, Star Wars, both of which are full of fantasy masquerading as science. So I write about that on my website. I also do science fiction criticism, a lot of discussion of the surveillance state, the dangers of unchecked artificial intelligence, how we shouldn't forget the concept of Asimov's 4 laws of robotics, actually the original 3 laws plus the 0th law that was added later, and the problems of potential virtual reality autocracy. I'm kind of critical of Elon Musk, not only for his use of government funding to build his own empire, but his seemingly two-faced view of artificial intelligence and virtual reality. On the one hand, he warns of the problems of artificial intelligence making us less than necessary part of the world, or becoming, I think what was the word he used, irrelevant. Promoting that, we add a thing to our organics called neural lace, which is a passive addition to our brain, which is more kind of like a scaffolding, which will help us develop more neural tissue. And then on the other hand, he's building a company, or at least partially involved in a company called Neuralink, which will help us plug into computers. It's kind of bringing William Gibson's
Neuromancer?
Neuromancer, yeah, in the Neuromancer world, the cyberspace, which was, of course, William Gibson's invention back in the 80s, when Neuromancer was written. Of course, the concept predated Gibson. Phil Dick really wrote about it much earlier, and he wrote about it more, I think, more passionately in many ways than Gibson did. Gibson gave it some concreteness and some clarity, but Dick wrote about it far more in a spiritual and emotional way. But both are very important to understand, and it's just an extension of Huxley and Orwell. and in many ways, Bradbury. When we get to this state, and then we forget about it. We forget about it because our society is so distracted with the milieu of electronia, as I call it. It's my little neologism for that whole glittering LCD screen that hangs in front of us everywhere we look. It's kind of built into our psyche now. So, and then I'm also writing about science, trying to show people that they shouldn't get so excited about a future that's going to do their life for them. It's still a world where we're going to have to work. It's still a world ahead of us that's not ever going to be post, what was the word that we were using earlier, Daniel? Post-scarcity. There's never going to be a lack for want. There will always be needs, and whenever there's a need, there'll always be want, because no matter how much our needs are met, it's always going to turn into a want. So wants always transmogrify into needs, no matter what. Nobody else can decide what our needs are, and they may try to hold us in. They may try to imprison us and tell us, "Well, this is all you need." Our parents always wanted to tell us that. My wife tries to tell me that all the time. Well, you only need this. I found something on the internet that I really liked, and it really determined. It really is a statement of my life. I found this black box, and it has a little, not a hand, but something kind of like a hand. Certainly something that is analogous to a hand. It pokes out of the box and turns a switch and turns itself on. And then adjacent to it, there's a hand, and the hand turns the switch back off. But the box will move to avoid the hand, and the hand will move to reassert itself upon the switch. So, and they keep trying to avoid each other. Well, I'm the box, and my wife is the hand. And this is just how we operate. I usually win, but I do it by hiding. So, and lots of couples operate this way. There's always this furtiveness in a relationship where people like to, sometimes you just have to hide to get what you want. So, or, you follow the Rolling Stones, their song, you can't always get what you want, but, you pretend that you believe that, and you go do whatever the hell you want anyway. So, anyway.
Right. Yes, human desire is infinite, and market is what best satisfies that. Even though ANCOMs will like to say that in a resource-based economy, everyone's needs will be met, but that's them deciding what your needs are.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what I tell my friends. You don't know what my needs are. You may know objectively what a body chemistry is, and know that I need a certain amount of oxygen on a daily basis, and that I will emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide and water. That I will need a certain amount of protein and carbohydrate to burn, and that I need to intake a certain amount of fat and oils and this many vitamins and minerals and whatnot to maintain my body. I need to pump so much blood. I need certain level of shock waves to assist in the blood flow in my brain, so I need to walk. Walking is very important to assist in the maintenance of good cognitive function in a brain. Bicycling is not the best way to maintain good cognitive function in exercise because of the shock waves that are developed in walking and running. So, high impact is great, but people don't know that necessarily. They can't determine for me what I need. I'm the only one that can determine that. It's the same with value of a good.
Right.
Nobody can tell me what something is worth. Only I can.
Right. I can't tell you what makes you happy. You can't tell me what makes me happy.
Well, that's right. And no one can say, it's like the old idea, well, that person shouldn't shoot himself. We should tell him, we should go stop him. It's not good. It wouldn't be good for him to kill himself. It wouldn't be good for him to pull that trigger. Well, what do you mean? It's his decision, and we should make a law against it. Well, why?
A lot of good it's going to do him.
Well,
government do that all the time.
Well,
government will say, make a law that make it so you can't buy a large soda.
And that's always considering that is you see, that's where classical liberalism differs with Rothbardian Mises, because classical liberalism it's where Locke and the Declaration of Independence would differ with the Austrian approach, because the Declaration of Independence talks about inalienable rights, or unalienable, which is really a misinterpretation of the way the word should be spelled and used. It may have been the spelling of the day, but the real spelling today is inalienable. But what it means is that it's inalienable, period. You do not, according to the Declaration of Independence, a natural right, a God-granted right, is a right that I cannot alienate. If I have a right to life granted by God, I cannot take my own life by that definition. That's why there were always laws against attempted suicide. Obviously, you can't make a law against suicide, because once the act is committed, there is no punishment.
How do you punish it?
You can't punish it, but you are able to punish an attempted suicide. But those laws, I'm not sure if there are any laws like that left on the books. But there were laws like that at one time, and they were there because of that very concept of an inalienable right, an inalienable natural right, a right granted by God. You had no right to do it. Similarly, you did not have a right to alienate your own right to liberty. In other words, you did not have the right to sell yourself into slavery, to sell yourself into a service contract. Well, I can't think of the name of it now. Where someone would come over from England.
Indentured servitude.
An indenture, yeah, you cannot indenture yourself, and that was part of the Constitution. So yeah, those became decried in the Declaration of Independence because of the concept of natural right. In this case, God-given right, rights granted by our Creator. So
that's Mark, everyone. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Mark. How you doing, buddy?
Okay.
All right. So, hey, let's start talking about this movie, Star Trek Beyond. And honestly, we can just kind of use it as a jumping off point into all of the Star Trek universe and any concepts or ideas that come to mind.
Star Trek Beyond Belief. This is actually a fairly well-reviewed movie. All these Star Trek reboots movies are fairly well-reviewed. The second one, I think, less so. But this one got an 86% from Google, 84% Rotten Tomatoes, and a 7.1 on IMDb. It made $343 million at the box office. It was directed by the Fast and the Furious alum Justin Lin. And here's the little synopsis Google gives us. A surprise attack in outer space forces the Enterprise to crash land on a mysterious world. The assault came from Krall, the lizard-like dictator who derives his energy by sucking the life out of his victims. Krall needs an ancient artifact, invaluable artifact to board the badly damaged starship left stranded in a rugged wilderness. Kirk, Spock, and the rest of the crew must now battle a deadly alien race while trying to find a way off their hostile planet. So, Mark, what's your first note? What's your first talking point? What's your first bullet point? What are we doing here?
Well, actually, my first bullet point, I didn't write down because I it's hard to write down a pile of vomit on the floor.
Okay, I agree.
That
So you didn't like the movie, Mark?
well, the movie is so illogical. The screenplay is horrible. Now the screenplay was written. Now I can't think of the name of the guy. It was written by
Simon Pegg.
Yes, Simon Pegg, who
Right.
who
Hot
is
Fuzz.
a
Good stuff.
Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead,
End of the World.
yeah,
Mhm. Shaun of the Dead.
the
Absolutely.
World's End,
Right.
Shaun of the Dead, World's End, and Hot Fuzz are all good movies. I mean, they're huge. End of the World's End is great.
Right.
But I can't say that he is an excellent. I mean, he's not an excellent screenplay writer. Clearly not.
It seems like, well, he's a huge Star Trek fan, and maybe that kind of hurt his objective storytelling. Who knows?
I mean, there's so many things about this movie that are illogical. The first thing that struck me about this film was the origin of the artifact. Kirk happens to come into possession of it in a rather unrelated negotiation. It ends up on his ship, and instead of leaving it at the way station that he ends up, which is another technological absurdity. I can't even remember what they call the stupid thing. I mean, it was called a glass snowball by McCoy, which unfortunately it wasn't filled with artificial snowflakes and water. But my question again for that is, where the hell do they get all the oxygen to fill it? I mean, you would think they would put it near a planet or something where they could derive some materials to build it with. But it seems to be out in the middle of nowhere.
They got it from science, Mark. The science.
That's right.
Wait, was it Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye doing the science for this?
It was no, it was Simon Pegg.
It was Simon Pegg doing the science.
Oh, well, so a level up.
That's right.
Probably.
That's right. It was Simon Pegg. It was, yeah. No, if I had been doing the science, it would have made sense. But you see, I learned science by learning science, not by watching science fiction or watching Star Trek to learn science fiction. So there's that. And then the second is, how is it that Krall knew it? The Enterprise actually had the thing in the first place. There's no information about how he knew that it came to be in Kirk's possession. It's just a mystery. It's an unexplained mystery.
Yeah, that is absolutely missing from the script. It seemed like that was a scene that was left on the cutting room floor or something. There should have absolutely been some sort of scene where that scientist lady or the person pretending to be a scientist lady finds out that it's on board this ship.
Right.
Or something.
Well, there's a few other mysteries.
He absolutely attacks the ship and goes straight for it.
Well, there's a few other mysteries that I want to bring out at the front here. Why do when they're escaping to the planet's surface, that Scott ends up at the edge of the cliff, hanging on, Fast and Furious style, and of course every other over the cliff, edge of the cliff kind of thing. I mean, this is only a typical cliche in movies, action movies. He's hanging there, and then a scene or two later, he's on the ground walking around. I think what they missed was they missed the scene where he climbs down, because what actually happened is they fell to his death, and that's why he's not going to be in any more movies. They missed the shot, and they wrote it. They told a completely different story to the press as to what happened. So, I know that's just my suspicion. I mean, Alex Jones may have a different story. I don't know. I mean, I can out Alex Jones if I have to.
You're crazier than Alex Jones? Oh, go ahead.
I could be.
Okay.
It's not performance art. I mean, I don't talk about, I'm a seething, my brain is a seething sponge of energy or something like that.
Is that what he said?
He says strange things. I've only seen, 10-second clips and things like that. Another interesting thing is about this nebula. Now, every nebula, the Enterprise, it seems from any particular series, anytime they go into a nebula, they always seem to lose the ability to communicate. Now, in this case, I think, let me see my notes here. Why are so many nebula in fucking communicado? Maybe it's because it's the nebula avocado. Maybe
it's definitely a trope that they use, that the screenwriters use to, create difficulties for the protagonist to overcome.
I think it should be the nebula avocado because they've discovered now 3 centuries hence that there are particles associated with the flavor quark. In this case, they're called, let's see, what could we call these things? I know, cilantrinos. So shoot the nebula avocado with cilantrinos. And now the Roman Catholic Church is going to travel to the this nebula to find the source of holy moly. In other words, cosmic guacamole. So, I don't know. This is the source of south of the border food somewhere in that nebula. I don't know. So that way, so we know why Scotty.
Okay.
Now Krall needs this bioweapon, but he has these ships, these drones that he uses. I guess the primary reason he really needs that bioweapon is so that he can have a really cool way to die. And then that ship, that engineer, alien is working out of, why is it that he doesn't know where it is? I mean, hell, he was a captain of the stupid thing.
Right.
I mean, she had it.
They explain it that she had it under cloak, but
yeah, but he landed the stupid thing there.
Right.
I mean,
he had this whole army of people.
Yeah, so she's got a
they could have been out searching for it.
I mean, what's he been drinking? Some kind of beer and smoking dope? I mean, what's Sensimilla? I'm Maui Wowie. I'm sorry, these are dopes from my day, some back in the day weed. But I don't. So anyway,
what did you think, Mark, of the motorcycle? You have a problem with that?
No, I not really, but still, it's nice that it's working after so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, really, come on, how many people are going to have a motorcycle in a starship, that just happened to be there for that particular movie? I mean,
right.
It makes no sense.
What did you think of the use of music to disrupt all the communications of the swarm?
Well, it might as well. I mean, nothing else makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, it actually makes more sense than pretty much anything else in this movie.
Okay. That gets a pass.
And once I found out that woman had duped him, that alien had duped him, I would have just shot her head off. I mean, we don't want this nice treatment. We just blow her head off. I know we're nonviolent anarchists, but I mean, anarchism doesn't sound all that nonviolent to me. Once in a while, justice must be served.
Kirk in this reboot seems to be a pretty stupid moron. He's crashed the Enterprise like 3 times. He gets duped all the time. He barely survives. and then they keep promoting the guy. I mean, he's like the quintessential
Fails
bureaucrat,
forward.
right? Fails forward.
That's right.
Can't sniff out this person or alien who's duping him. And man, I watched this movie and I was like, this is a trap, obviously.
Well, the other thing is, when they're being attacked by those drones the first time, their shields are ineffective. Why are their shields effective? Because the shield projector has been damaged. But why is the shield projector not protected by the field it's projecting? Is there some reason why it can't protect itself with its own field? I mean, this is ridiculous. So
You're right. Not according to the script, it can't.
of course
All
not.
powerful script.
Yeah, can't we think a little more deeply than the obvious? I mean, it's okay if you're an 8-year-old, or even, for a lot of these guys in their 20s, they can look past that stuff again, because these are Pollyannas who see Star Trek as, they look at Star Trek like, Christians who believe in inerrancy of Scripture look at Scripture. So, it's all the same.
Yeah, I'm not big into the Star Trek community, but I'm wondering how these reboots have fared among the true hardcore sci-fi fans, the hardcore Star Trek fans.
Well, I'm sure.
If you go back and watch the whole movies, all the shows and whatnot, especially the original cast movies, these movies are super slow paced. But now you get to these reboots and it's action, adventure, explosions, blowing up, shooting guns and lasers and nonstop.
I have a comment on that. In YouTube, under the trailer for this thing, there's a guy who commented, said, Star Trek is about exploration, first contacts, time directives, hierarchy, special phenomena, alien culture, advanced technology, science shit. All I see here is explosions, ass-kicking, screams, weapons, the Enterprise being destroyed again, and a motorcycle. Where are the writers in this thing?
That's right.
Right.
But the problem is that Star Trek is not about science either. Star Trek is about fantasy. Star Trek,
right.
Star Wars, most science fiction. Now, see, Guardians of the Galaxy makes no bones about it being fantasy, because it's a comedy.
Correct.
It's a comedy. It's meant to be a comedy. It's pure entertainment, and it's great fun. I haven't seen this one, but the first one was a hoot, No one agreed. No one went there, expecting to have a serious movie. But you know what? There was a lot of seriousness in that movie. There really was a lot to think about. There was a lot more emotion in that movie, and a lot more, there was a lot more personal emotion than in anything in these Star Trek movies. So, I identified a lot more with, personal feelings in Guardians of the Galaxy. Personally with the parental relationship and things like that than anything in the Star Trek movie.
Yeah, Daniel, can I throw this one at you? Did you feel a connection to these characters at all? We've had decades knowing these characters, but maybe it was just this particular movie that I didn't really care about anything that was happening. Well, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say that this is probably the worst of the three of the reboots. Chris Pine, he seems very wooden. The McCoy character is over the top. Scotty, I don't know, Simon Pegg I like sometimes, but I think he was trying to make the engineering, like the drummer in the band, make him cool. So it's like the drummer got to write the song in this one. So, he's doing the cliffhanger stuff. And then, why did they bring up this, female version of Jar Jar Binks? This, Jayla.
Yeah.
With the broken Ebonics, language, like she can barely speak, a complete sentence. She sounds like an infant. And I don't understand what the point of her is and why she's, in this black and white face makeup, being a Aboriginal style, like, stick fighter.
She was
And
a
why-
native that helped them explain, help
No,
them
no,
understand the danger that they were facing, right?
her ship crashed there as well, or was attacked, and then she escaped this prison, and she later tells Kirk, "Don't go to this place because everyone dies." Well, she didn't, right? That was a note, Mark, you had in yours.
Yeah. Well, her family did, but she escaped. That was what was kind of it was a miss.
Right.
It was like everyone dies, but she didn't. So so her statement wasn't really accurate.
But then she finds this ship, the Franklin, and then cloaks it. How long has she been there? There's this time shift thing, right? The Franklin's been there for years,
right?
And then she got attacked by this Krall person, and then was imprisoned and then escaped. So how did she find it when
cloaked it?
Right?
Or was it? You think it was cloaked the whole time?
And she just ran into it.
I would imagine that she cloaked it because she set up those thingamajigs that they turned off when they went to move it, right? These little projectors.
Right, and then her loud music and the singing and the loud noises.
So before all that, it was just sitting there uncloaked. So why was it not found? I guess we just glossed over that. Who cares, right?
That's
Keep
right.
Moving. I think a lot of things happen in these kind of movies where you're just like, it's happening so fast that the directors just hope you don't notice. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, presumably,
the action moves fast enough.
Presumably, up until she escaped, there was no reason for him to be looking for it. But if he knew where it was, and he went back to it, and it was cloaked, he'd wonder why it wasn't there.
Well, but they were weren't they looking for a ship to get off planet? Or what exactly?
Yeah, but they found her first, and then she showed him where it was. So they wouldn't have, they didn't have to find it first. They found her, or she found them. And then she showed them where it was. But I'm talking about, Krall. Krall might have looked.
Yeah, let's talk about Krall.
Yeah.
What about Krall? I mean, let's talk about a little bit.
I just want to mention that, speaking of the script, while they were filming, like they were starting to film, they had several delays because of multiple script rejections. So this thing...
not surprising.
They should have had a few more.
Yeah, they did reshoots.
Right.
Looks like it was a mess.
Okay,
right, so let's talk about Krall.
Yeah, let's talk about Krall and his motivations and if he worked at all as a villain for anybody. So in the movie, he is a former, spoiler alert, captain of this ship, right? What was it called? The Jefferson or the Franklin or whatever?
Franklin, yep.
And he has since acquired some sort of technology that allows him to suck the life force out of people, and it extends his life and makes him stronger, but it also changes the way he looks. So he starts out as this human guy and slowly turns him into this like lizard monster guy. And his whole big beef with the Federation is that they kind of left him alone. Like he disappeared on this ship and they never came to get him. And so then that means he wants to teach him a lesson and he wants to go and kill everybody because conflict makes you stronger and cooperation is a weakness. So I guess does that make sense to anybody on any level? I mean, I don't think that Germany was better off after World War I. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I think there is a point to, you have to struggle, you have to work at something to grow and develop, if that's how you take it. But if it's, you must be warlike to advance, then definitely it's an incorrect, fallacious statement.
Right. Like you must kill people and murder them and be at war and conflict in order to advance. I mean, you can find your strength through struggle, sure, but you can't learn from dying. And anyway, Mark,
other people can learn when you die. But that's
sure. If you stick your finger in a light socket and then you die from electrocution, people can look at that and say, maybe I shouldn't do that.
As long as other people are looking. That's right.
Right.
Always make sure if you plan to die, other people are watching you, so you can do society some good.
If you're going to die for some stupid reason, make sure it's filmed and put up on YouTube.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of script, Here's something that is frequent, and it's been frequent in Star Trek since The Next Generation, and it's no different in the movies. And that is the repeated failure of Starship Enterprise to learn from one episode to the next. They make the same failures of judgment over and over and over again, particularly in the television series. And then they usually solve it with double talk. Particularly in The Next Generation, this began. But it was used in most of the episode, most of the series after that. It didn't happen so much in the original series because science fiction authors were writing it. But once they went to writing staffs of average writers, people that didn't have either science degrees or science fiction backgrounds, then they got a machine which is called the DTG, which means double talk generator, and they just, they put in nonsense and got more nonsense out. And then they have people like Wesley Crusher, who is, this 13-year-old busybody who solves problems for no apparent reason. And you have the staff of engineers who apparently know dick. And I mean, the whole show is absurd, and then they have the same problem the next week. I think it happened in 20 minutes into the movie. You get a lot of double talk in this particular. I don't remember what happens 20 minutes in, but it's around when they start when the ship's being attacked and they start grabbing their plastic guns. You can tell the way the guns behave that they have no mass, because they, real guns, if they're energy weapons, are going to have sufficient mass to store energy. And to do that, you're going to need the certain materials that have weight that can store energy. You can't just have cheap plastic to store energy. I'm sorry, but it's not going to change much over this period of time. I don't believe. I just don't believe the technology is going to get there, or you're going to be able to do that. So at least let's put some reality to the weapons and make weapons act like like real. Make them look like they're more difficult to move around than cheap plastic filled with styrofoam. Reality in the way things behave. It's just like in the holodecks. The holodecks, to create a guy the size, in one of the later episodes of The Next Generation, there was one where Data and Picard were playing the parts of Holmes and Watson. In one episode, they took on Moriarty. Now, I figured Moriarty weighed about, from his period, they would have weighed in Englishmen in units of stone. So I figured Moriarty weighs about 12.5 stone. But if you're going to, as this fellow at Life, Love, and Anarchy, create it totally out of energy, then you have to use Einstein's equation of E equals mc squared, where you take the rest mass of 175 pounds in terms of mass, or 175 pound mass, and multiply that by the square of the speed of light. Well, you come up with, it's on my website, but I think it's around 7.5 times 10 to the 18th joules. 38 joules, just so you'll know, is about what it would feel like if you got hit in the head with a 8-ounce rock, thrown at 10 miles an hour from about 20 feet away, or maybe 30 miles, 15 miles an hour. So it'd give you a pretty good wallop. Well, what I just described to you, 7 times 10 to the 18th joules, is about 100,000 Hiroshima bombs. that's how much energy it would take to create 175 pounds of matter, which is a lot of energy. And you're not going to just be carrying that much around on the Enterprise. And that's what it would take if you're going to create stuff that are replicated. So when we get back to things like the post-scarcity society, and that's why the guy on Life, Love, and Anarchy, when he talks about the replicator, he doesn't understand the science, nor does anyone in the Star Trek universe do either. So the other option is to have 175 pounds of other stuff just laying around that you could somehow mold by using a force field, quote unquote, to do that. Unfortunately, there's no force fields around that will manipulate just any old kind of matter. There's only one kind of force field that will manipulate matter, and that's an electromagnetic force field. Can't do with gravitational force. We don't have the ability to manipulate. Only huge masses can do that, and that's like solar mass or a planetary masses that you're my level are too low, and we can't do it fast enough to really make matter move in any real, any rational rate that'll look, that will behave like a real person. But to use electromagnetic forces would require something that will react to electromagnetic forces, and that would be either a ferromagnetic or para or diamagnetic material. And there are only so many of those things. And to make it feel like skin or look like it or to have clothes on it, I mean, we're talking some great deal of complexity here. So the reality of that is breathtakingly, incredibly complex. And I really doubt that we're ever going to come to that kind of a thing where someone's just going to walk in. More likely, and if you read about it on my website, I talk about what a real holodeck is going to be like. And what it's going to be like is a virtual reality system where we're actually not aware of our own bodies, where a system is going to be, where it's going to exist such that we'll be divested of the outside world, where our minds will be inserted into a virtual reality, and we'll deal in that space. We'll have complete awareness of a body, of our own bodies, but we won't have it on the outside. It will be an interior sensation. So, and we will exist with other people. We can do any kind of physical interaction with them, have any kind of emotional interaction with them, any kind of physical relationship, from, sexual to sleep to any kind of physical interaction, from heavy stress, exercise, and fights, and even simulated death. So, but that's the only way something like that would really work. So what they've shown is not real science.
Yeah, it seems highly impractical if you actually get into it, like you just described.
Yeah, well, that's why I just want to point out. Yeah.
And therefore, the amount of cost required would just be astronomical to be able to just prance about in a little room and have your little adventures.
That's right. That's right. And plus to be able to do it and change things rapidly, to have not only create mass, but to then move it around quickly, to generate the sound, to generate changes in heat on a body, to go to generate a refrigerator with something inside it like ice cubes. Like when Picard is playing a detective, to have some guy come in and shoot bullets at it. This is absurd. So, it's cool to think about, but it's never going to be a real reality in a physical sense, in an external sense. In a virtual reality, yes.
So you imagine like some sort of a situation where you would go or at least have it in your home, where you would put on a helmet and then kind of disappear into this world?
No, it would be one the only way to do it is not a helmet. To really obtain, well, I guess you could do it with a helmet. But it would
some
be,
sort of spinal cord implant?
No, you don't want. Well, yeah, you could, or it could even be something as something like a squid interface, a superconducting interface, possibly an implanted system of a network of superconducting superconducting mesh overlaid on your cranium. Overlaid on your brain. I'm not sure what the technology of Neuralink is going to be that Elon Musk has invested in, or is actually developing. And then that's the other thing with Musk, is that he's warning us on the one hand about the problems of artificial intelligence, that we have this issue of becoming irrelevant in relation to artificial intelligence, that we have an opportunity to use this Neuralink substance, which, as I say, is passive, but would allow us to develop more neural tissue in our brain that would make us less irrelevant. But then something like that could also become or be made active potentially in a different revision, I suppose. But the Neuralink, on the other hand, is a way for us to plug into a system, an interface, if you will. So there is a kind of a mixed message from Musk here. And then Musk is a mixed bag himself, because here he's making far more use of the government to build his empire than other entrepreneurs are. They're certainly they're selling to the government, sure, but they're doing a lot more of the development on their own dollar, or on their investors' dollars, and I certainly support them. The electromagnetic resonance drive, for one thing, is not a government-funded project. It's been developed privately. And there are a number of companies out there with drive mechanisms. So, and possibly even the Alcubierre warp drive is potentially viable. When Alcubierre.
Yeah. So, hey, Mark, about the warp drive going faster than the speed of light.
Actually, it's interesting you say that, because it actually doesn't violate the speed of light issue.
The amount of energy required to open a wormhole.
It's not a wormhole.
It's not a wormhole.
No.
Well, so what is it then? Or what is the actual explanation?
Well,
do you buy it?
Yeah, I do. The way Alcubierre did, he solved Einstein's equations. What you do is you decide what kind of solution you want, and you sort of back solve the equations to develop what you need to do to achieve that solution. And his first paper in 1992, he determined that you would need a certain amount of antimatter to do this, and his first determination was antimatter equal to an amount the size of Saturn, which is quite a bit of antimatter. It certainly made it impossibly impractical.
Doesn't CERN be concerned that CERN was going to make some antimatter, but it's like the type, like not even a pinhead, and it'll only exist for a fraction of a second?
Yeah, well, you can mine antimatter from space. You can collect it. You don't actually have to manufacture it. But anyway, NASA, after they didn't start on this initially right away, but they've been working on it for a few years, and they've gotten the antimatter requirement down to about 500 kilograms, about 1,100 pounds. Now, what the Alcubierre drive does is to warp the space time around the vessel so that it actually will cause the local space-time to move with the vessel inserted in that space-time. So the vessel itself doesn't move in relationship to the space it's embedded in. It's the space itself that moves. So as the ship itself doesn't move in relation to space, the ship or this vessel does not move faster than the speed of light. The space it's in moves from one place to the other, and the space moves at a rate about 10 times the speed of light. So we could get to, say, Proxima Centauri in about, 1/4 of 4 years. So about 4 months. Less, 48 over 4, about 5 months. If you could collect 1,100 pounds of antimatter. Now, that's a lot to collect. But with sufficient, and you have to do it by collecting them from higher energy cosmic rays that are passing through a thin layer of matter. So you do it by either going out to the rings of Saturn and putting collectors on one side of it or on both sides so that cosmic rays passing from either direction. You collect the antimatter that's being knocked out, and you collect it before it interacts with other matter and and releases the energy back into the environment.
Right.
And you can also insert your own matter to do it. But I'm sure there are strategies that will be developed to enhance the ability to collect it. But I see in the future some way of trawling antimatter out of the system. In fact, I was considering using that idea like a fleet of antimatter trawlers in the solar system, just out collecting large amounts of antimatter.
Okay, so you're actually giving the warp drive in Star Trek kind of a pass and one of the more plausible aspects of it. What about?
Well, that's the thing, because the warp, because that actually would be a warp drive. It uses a warp space to do it. So you're not actually traveling faster than the speed of light. That's the thing. You're not breaking Einstein's speed limit, and that's why. See, if you actually traveled faster than the speed of light, if you could break past that barrier. See, the reason you can't actually get past that barrier is it requires infinite energy to do it. As you move faster, first of all, time dilates. So from another observer, you slow down until, in essence, by the time you get to the speed of light, you're not moving at all to the other observer. It's what happens as you fall into a black hole. To someone outside the black hole, you appear to stop moving completely. And then, of course, your mass increases. So it takes infinite energy to accelerate yourself to the speed of light. So you have two problems. You stop moving, and it takes infinite energy to get to the point where you stop moving. So it's like, well, why even try? So there has to be some other way to do it. You'd have to do it through some feature like tunneling, like a semiconductor, like in a semiconductor, like in a tunnel diode, where the electrons actually break through the barrier through a process called quantum tunneling. I don't know if there's an equivalent process in breaking from the sublight to the superluminal regime or not, but if you do, then all of a sudden you travel back in time. So, and that is the solution to faster than light travel in Minkowski's.
All right. So, what about transporters then? what, do you give those a pass also? Because aren't you essentially just incinerating one person and then creating a copy of that person in another place?
Yeah, that is an issue. That is an issue because there's certainly a lot of philosophical issues around that. You would certainly be taking. You wouldn't be creating a new matter out of energy again because of the cost of the energy to do it. As I said, for every 175-pound man or woman, if you happen to have a fleet of or a crew of Amazons, you of course for smaller people, of course, the energy costs would go down,
right?
By linearly.
Then I demand transporter neutrality.
Well, what you'd have, yeah, right. What you'd have, yes, I mean, we'd have to have a non-sexism clause in transporter usage. But what we'd have to have is a source of components available, various atoms of different compounds, different substances, different elements, in order to recreate the needed proteins and stuff that compose a person's body. You wouldn't have the energy necessary to create from out of nothing. In other words, out of pure energy, every person that you send out. So that way, that's not a way of transport or whatever. You'd either have a tanks and tanks of molecules to assemble, essentially print by epitaxial depositing, like a crystal or like a semiconductor or some other way.
So dilithium crystals are real?
Well, that's the other thing. You could not actually create dilithium crystals in a replicator. Because if you could, then you would also have the ability to have perpetual motion. Because you could create dilithium crystals from the energy generated by the ship, and then you could power the ship with dilithium crystals. Problem is, you'd use all the energy from the dilithium crystals just to create more dilithium crystals, and you wouldn't have any left over to do anything else. So you'd have it's a giant clusterfuck essentially. Pull a train for Jesus.
All right.
Yeah.
How about, Daniel, if you want to weigh in on this question, or also Mark, throughout the movie and throughout Star Trek in general, you get the sense that the Federation isn't quite as benevolent as it appears to be. You get the idea that at one point, one scene in the movie, they're drinking some kind of alcohol, but one of them remarks that it's illegal. How totalitarian is the Federation? Because I know the several villains in Star Trek's past have remarked about the Federation not being as benevolent as it makes itself out to be.
Well, it's absolutely not. I mean, they do not allow, almost like the United States. Once you're in, you can't get out. It's a Chinese finger trap theory of state. You pay to get in, and it's like there was a young harlot named Sue who filled up her sweet parts with glue. She said with a grin, "You paid to get in, now you'll pay to get out again too." And that's exactly how the United States works. The only
right, you try and succeed, and they'll start a war.
That's right. Now, I would gladly give California a pass, even though I love living there. There are some things about that state which, and I think anything on the West Coast is just a wonderful place to live. I have relatives up on Mercer Island, who lived on Mercer Island. Now they're up in La Conner, up there by the
really?
By the tulip fields. Up there.
Yeah, that's right around where we're at. Yep.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I grew up not far from the Connor.
Okay.
Daniel did
I like it up there, up by, what's that, something pass up there where the water flows out into that, called a high bridge.
Deception Pass, yeah.
Deception Pass, yeah, I've done some crabbing out there before, so.
Sure.
Yeah, hung there a few times, of course, recently, I've been watching, USC go up there to kick Washington's ass, so I really enjoy that. And I think I'll enjoy it for the next few years, so.
Maybe not.
No, maybe yes. So I'll lay you money on that one. Not odds, but money. So, yeah. It's fine. It's nice for a change, you know. We got a good quarterback for the next couple of years, but anyway.
Yeah, anyways. I mean, I'm liking our coach. He really turned the program around.
Yeah, well, I know our coach helped turn USC around, that's for sure. But finally, a coach that's not a drunk or a mental case. So.
Yeah, you could be talking about UW also.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
So, hey, Mark, speaking of Star Trek, you sent me some clips to play. Is there a good time to weave those into our narrative here?
Well, actually, the only one, the theme song, of course, is no big deal. I mean, you can play that anytime.
Space, a final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Trouble with Tribbles, by the way, was written by David Gerrold, who he wrote the first book I read on writing science fiction called Worlds of Wonder. It's a great book on writing science fiction and fantasy, and some of the best parts of that book were about trouble with Tribbles, and also about two big things about writing science fiction. One is writing metrically. Two, how to write about memes in general. And also something called E-prime, which is an interesting topic. E-prime is writing without the existential verb. That is the verb to be.
There must be thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands. 1,771,561. That's assuming one Tribble, multiplying with an average litter of 10, producing a new generation every 12 hours over a period of 3 days.
Yeah, that's assuming that they got here 3 days ago.
And allowing for the amount of grain consumed and the volume of the storage compartment.
When one eschews that from his or her writing, you,
or she.
I said he or she.
Or she.
Or she,
Don't be binary in your genders, Mark.
I apologize. Oh, fuck me. You can go with us.
Gender normative bigot.
Ableist. Well, I'm sorry. There is there was this great thing on YouTube from a year or so ago, from the German Parliament. I don't know if you saw it, but in response to a request from one of the parties to include all genders in their addresses.
Leave on.
This fellow went through all 60 possible combinations. And it took him about 5 minutes, and he addressed all of the possibilities, and then his response was no, and then he sat down. So it was interesting. I don't know if you saw that, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I saw it. German Parliament. That's what I'm subscribed to.
Yeah, it was hilarious. That was my introduction to this whole topic, and I think it was about the last time I concerned myself with it.
For the best.
Yes, I tell you. There's certain things in this world I just can't worry myself about. And there are plenty of other people worrying about it, including those who are most concerned with it. So I will let them create a digest for me, and periodically I will look at it. So, but E prime is an interesting topic, and the nice thing about it is that if you try to write that way, you will exude active writing and avoid as much as possible passivity in your writing. And that's it's important because passive writing makes your writing sound very diminutive, like you're afraid. It's good for writing the dialogue of bureaucrats, or people with weak personalities. It's really intended for them. A.E. Van Vogt wrote a novel in the 30s called A World of Null A. Null A stood for non-Aristotelian, meaning non-Aristotelian logic. And it was based on the work of this Polish mathematician, who was a guy who also developed Polish notation and then reverse Polish notation on which the Hewlett-Packard calculators, RPN notation, was based. And that led to a certain type of semantics that the former California Senator S.E. Hayakawa taught at the University of San Francisco, and also into a kind of sales techniques that was I forget what it was called. Anyway, there was a lot of interesting. A. Van Vogt wrote this book, World of Null A, and then recently a current science fiction writer wrote a final novel, a sequel to it, with permission from the Van Vogt estate, which was called, I forget the name of it. It was Null A, extending the concept. So, and I haven't read it yet, but I'd like to. The World of Null A is a very interesting experiment in thought. So, of course, part of it takes place on Venus, in those days when people didn't realize Venus was not a place people could actually live and breathe. But you suspend your judgment enough. It's a really interesting read. So, anyway, replicators. There's another topic that is worth talking about. We kind of touched on them. Replicators, again, are another concept that will not end want. And the Ferengi, by the way, are our heroes of the galaxy. In the Star Trek universe, they are, if there were actually another technological society out there, Star Trek and all the other science fiction modalities that occur in fiction, at least cinematic fiction, except for a few, fill the universe with other cultures. Well, at least Star Trek has one believable and truly vivid culture that actually makes sense, and that's the Ferengi. The Ferengi are an ANCAP culture that works. They essentially are governed by capital. They have a vision of a spiritual vision of that is marked by worlds connected by mutual support through needs that are supported by other worlds where supplies are available to meet the needs of other worlds. It's amazing. It's the only society that actually works without violence. It's really an egalitarian society that doesn't have violence. It doesn't have really much in the way of any kind of evil dictatorships. So it's amazing. No one gets really upset with these guys, except they're kind of displayed as they're kind of made fun of in the shows, but in reality, they're not bad guys. But you have to kind of look at them closely. And that's the point that Life, Love, and Anarchy makes, finally, when they get around to it. I mean, if you can get past this guy's science mistakes, and you can get past his mythology about Star Trek, he goes through this sort of a history that he draws, on how the Star Trek universe develops from the original show and then on into the final Star Trek, at least where he stopped, not with the new upcoming Star Trek television show. It makes sense. It works, but he fills it in with some ideas that Khan and his group, he uses images of images of Freemasonry, which is not
really,
which is not really is not written up at all in Star Trek, but he just sort of uses it. Maybe he just has this sort of idea about Freemasonry still sitting behind the workings of the world. I mean, he could use the Bilderbergers, or he could use Robert Anton Wilson's ideas as well, which seems to fit in more with a lot of anarchist ideas about some of the prehistory of the current world situation. I mean, Wilson was sort of fits into a lot of agorists. I know, certainly, that I know back here, look to Wilson as kind of a guru of anarchist mythology anyway.
Okay.
You're familiar with Wilson? He certainly has a science fiction following.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him, but I will look it up. But hey, speaking of mythology, let's come back to our movie a little bit, because we've been going almost 90 minutes, and I don't know if we've talked enough about the film to make this actually a show about Star Trek Beyond.
Sorry.
No problem. You've got plenty of awesome stuff going on, but we are ostensibly talking about movies and kind of want to be able to get this show done today if we can. So where did we last leave our heroes? They had flipped the shell of the Enterprise over on the woman who betrayed them. She was trying to keep the device, or she was trying to find the device. And then, so she gets crushed, and then what? Then Jayla takes Kirk and an injured Spock and Bones to the outpost where Krall is, and tries to free them using a distraction of some sort.
With the motorcycles?
Yeah, the motorcycles and her a hologram type device.
Yeah, now that hologram, she was using it earlier in the film, fighting the guys who are gonna get Scotty, and they could fight, right? They had masks to them, so they were actually fighting the people like physically.
Or were they just mirror images?
They were just mirror. It was straight out. It was straight out of the first Total Recall with Schwarzenegger. It was a device that projected his image. Now, in this case, it projected Kirk's image 10 times over.
But each image was different, doing a different thing.
It was different, but it was the same idea. It was still to confuse.
Right.
And that's all. It didn't matter really whether it was doing different things or not. It was the whole idea was to confuse Krall.
So did anyone else get the vibe that they were trying to make him look like Captain America in that series on that old style
on the motorcycle?
Yeah.
He definitely did. I don't know if they were trying to make him look that way on purpose, but he definitely, yeah.
Well, he was also had a motorcycle in the first movie, so it kind of harkened back to that too.
Right.
So, yeah, they're certainly foreshadowing from that movie into this movie as well. So I'm not sure if it was as much Captain America as it was some foreshadowing from the first movie. So it could be either, or it could be both.
Right, okay. So they've distracted, and then they get the crew out of the cave, or out of the prison, and Scotty starts beaming them, I think 20 at a time. He's able to adjust, the transporter room on the Franklin that they've rebuilt?
It was an industrial transporter, not intended so much for personnel use. It was designed for cargo.
Right.
Right. So then they get the people off out of the prison and onto the Franklin, and then they take off, right, and get back to the floating snow globe space station.
Right.
And you had some comments on that in your notes, Mark. Talk about the space station a little bit.
They're totally for a wow factor. It's idiocy. It makes no sense. They have this huge empty space that they have to fill with an atmosphere instead of a normal space station that would have smaller tubes filled with a restricted atmosphere, so there would be far less resource required. Plus, they have stationary walkways. I mean, they have people walking in an artificial gravity environment. So they obviously have artificial gravity fields somehow set up. You know, this has been something they never talk about, that just exists. Some assumption. It exists in Star Wars. It exists in Star Trek. It exists on all kinds of science fantasy like this. There's never, it just is assumed. It's not something that is really ever going to exist. But it just is done. You know, it's done. It's right there. It's total foolishness. Things like good science fiction, like The Expanse, doesn't have it. And this is something that people need to promote. We want to have real science fiction for kids to see, not stuff that, I really would like people to be promoting into something that is scientifically rational or more reasonable, something that has a scientific explanation or potentially a reasonable scientific explanation. That's why I have my site. So we can talk about some potentially or some way to rationalize something into real science. That's my thing. I'd like to have a rational world. I know. I cringe. I'm sorry. Maybe my expectations are set too high, but when people are willing to vote for any of these people we have running for office, there are reasonable philosophies out there, but there's a lot of good science out there, but you don't see it enough in cinema. I guess because it gets boring. At least there are some movies that had some reasonable theses to them. Even The Arrival was pretty good. Mm-hmm. It had another civilization, which in of itself is not likely. We can talk about that too. The actual, the whole concept of so many other civilizations, technological civilizations, is idiotic. The existence of that many other technical civilizations is absolutely beyond belief. But people want it to be real. They want there to be all these other civilizations out there, but they're just not there. It's not at all likely that they are. The things that we found out there, just with the Kepler mission, don't look like likely possibilities for technological civilization. There's possibility of very low-level forms of life. But a lot of the places we found, if they have water on them, are not going to have much land. And most of them aren't going to have water. They may be in zones where water could be. But it's unlikely that a lot of them are going to have water. And if they do have water, as I said, they're not going to have much land. They're going to have a lot of water.
But Mark, with the sheer number of planets out there, there's got to be a bunch of Goldilocks planets out there. There's got to be.
That doesn't mean there's
millions.
That doesn't mean
billions of them.
No, not at all.
With trillions of planets in the universe?
We're not talking about the universe. we're talking about a galaxy right now. Anyway, the reality is that a lot of planets, a very high percentage of these planets are tidally locked, which means one side is facing the central sun, or the central star, which means that there's only a habitable band, maybe 40 to 50 miles wide, around the diameter of the planet. A side that's very hot, a side that's very cold, is uninhabitable. For a technological civilization to develop under situations like that is near impossible. And then additionally, you have to have a number of very unlikely things to occur. The fact that life got to this, as far as it did on our planet, required a number of incredibly improbable things to happen. Things just had to be just right. We had to have a tilt to our planet for seasons to occur, for weather to vary with seasons, so that we could develop plant life that would see and have a growing season. You had to have a lot of things that would occur for plant life to get past the simple funguses and ferns and that type of life, mold and whatnot, to end up with things like deciduous trees and evergreen type tree and seeding plants that have a growing season, a non-growing season, harvest time, planting time. So, unless there's some other
you're describing life as it exists on this planet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that life as we don't know it wouldn't exist on another planet under different conditions.
No, but it's very unlikely that if there were another type of life that we would ever detect it, because it's very unlikely it would communicate in a way that would be in a way that we would recognize as non-random, or a way that we would in other words, every civilization that exists in the Star Trek universe has a carbon-based life form, except the weird kinds of, once in a while you run across a silicon-based life form like they did once in the original Star Trek.
Or gas clouds, or energy.
Yeah, gas clouds, which make absolutely no sense. This is, this energy-based life, or the Q-based, or the consortium, or whatever it's called, where you end up with the shapeshift, whatever. These are very strange and fantasy type of life form. No, most life is going to be biology similar to ours, because it has to be a system that can replicate, that can pass down genetic characteristics from one generation to the next, that can base itself on a competitive structure that will have selection effects of an evolutionary style. People want to say that the scientific method was invented, but in reality, it's just a selection effect of evolution. It wasn't invented.
Aren't we moving towards?
What?
Aren't we moving towards a silicon-based life form, though?
Not necessarily. We may augment ourselves, but that's not a new life form. That's just...
Well, for now.
No, I don't really think so. That is a cyborg, if anything. But we really can't, we don't want to do what Musk is warning us against, and that is to make ourselves irrelevant. That's what we need to invoke. Asimov's 4 laws of robotics in any type of artificial intelligence system that we build, to make sure we do not allow ourselves to become slaves to any system that we ourselves design. In other words, we do not want to create our own master.
Right.
If we're going to free ourselves from the slavery of the state, we don't want to create a new system of slavery in technology. That would work against our whole concept of freedom.
But isn't it inevitable that someone will create an artificial intelligence that isn't subject to Asimov's laws?
Yes, but we can't allow that to happen. We have to make sure that we do not allow ourselves to be subject to that. And we have to be ready to fight against that as free human individuals. In other words, like we're willing to fight against the state.
Right.
Okay, someone will try, someone will make it, but we must prevent that from taking, from ourselves. That's why we create things like Tor, why his name, the guy who ran for president in the Libertarian Party, McAfee, is coming out with his phone who says it's almost hack-proof. Of course, if you do hack it, it will try to murder you. So, yes, a joke, of course, but he was accused of murder.
Yes, that's right, he was.
Yeah, so, and that his phone will clearly try to murder you if you hack it. So that's how it prevents hacking. So,
right.
My little attempt at humor. So anyway, but that's something we have to guard against, and very careful. I write about that on my site too. I mean, I'm very concerned about that. Absolutely concerned about that. Phil Dick was concerned about that. He wrote about that in his science fiction. I mean, it was a lot of his, a lot of his thematics was around surveillance state issues. I mean, it was Orwell. It was all about 1984. Ingsoc was, we can't let that concept,
I agree, absolutely.
I mean, this has to be our watch. That's why, Robert, you should look into lfs.org. So,
I will. Actually, I pulled that up. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and check out
Society.
Yeah, check out L. Neil Smith on Facebook. He has a website. I can't think of it right now.
Sure, the Forge of the Elders guy, right?
Yeah, he has a good website. Yeah, he has a good website. Cory Doctorow won the award. Neil Stevenson won the award. They also given the award to Ancom type writers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The award's also gone to a fellow who was involved.
I see Terry Pratchett won.
Yeah.
I don't normally think of him as a libertarian type writer.
Right. And also another fellow who was involved in early security, communication security type schemes. Can't think of his name, but from about 20 years ago. He's a science fiction author. Oh boy, I wish I could think of his name right now. I remember I've met
Paul
him
Anderson,
before.
Ken McLeod, Victor Coleman.
No, none
John
of those.
Barley.
No,
Werner
not
Vinge?
Werner Vinge. Yeah, Vinge. Yeah, because I know him from a committee I worked on back in the late 90s. We're developing some protection schemes for text files. So yeah, I was involved in that kind of stuff too. When I was also managing political campaigns back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s. I managed a couple of Republican campaigns, but I was getting paid. I didn't care. I was managing Republican campaigns based on rules for radicals materials. So
Is that Saul Alinsky?
yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. It works. Yeah, it works. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you convince a person they've been ignored by the representatives, been effectively disenfranchised as a result. You can get them to vote for the Republican. So I used it. I tried to use it for this libertarian guy I was advising, but it turned out he was just in it to advertise his products. So I quit. I said, "Screw you! You're not in it for true blue purposes. So, and then if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to work for you." Hell,
right. So let's get back. Do you have any more notes on the movie before we wrap up our talk on?
I know right there at 1:47:30 they did throw in I don't exactly remember what happened at that point, but it hit that last Deus Ex Machina moment right before Krall went tits up. And I wish I had the movie up. I was.
Well, no, see, so Kirk and Krall are
that's where they're fighting
where
they're fighting in the duck. Yeah, they're fighting in that duck, and
they're floating around.
Yeah, they're floating around. Something I don't remember what happened, but it was one of those things where the writers throw in. It's one of those, the police show up at the last minute, the kind of thing. Something happens that, something lucky happened. I don't remember what it was.
Was it the 4 locks and Kirk was getting stuck on the last one?
That's right. That's what it was.
Right. And then it seemed to me like Krall had a change of heart and was going to go help Kirk. Was that what was going on there, or was he going there to finish him off?
That's right. There's a change of heart. There were a few other nice things in there at the end. About a minute before that, there was a moment. I think it was at 1:30:40. Sulu had a moment where his expression looked like he was trying to, where he looked like he was looked like he had an opioid moment of constipation. I mean, there were some good points in this film. That rap music did screw Krall's machines up. So.
Yeah, he didn't plan for the rap.
No.
It'll always get you.
That's right.
Beastie Boys.
That's right. Is that what that was? Beastie Boys?
That's Beastie Boys Sabotage.
Yeah. So.
Classic from my time.
Is that right? Yeah, well, I'm still I'm Sergeant Pepper, and the other day I picked music from the 70s, and it still stuck me at age 74 on this because I picked the Peter.
Hello? I'm still here. Mark, did we lose you?
Lost.
Yeah, I'm hearing some.
I got static.
Yeah, just static.
All right,
maybe he's been beamed to another dimension.
Maybe he got teleported.
Well, we'll give him a moment to try to reconnect. Mark, if you can hear us, maybe disconnect and then reconnect. And if not, maybe, Robert, we should just wind this show down. What do you think?
Yeah, so Star Trek Beyond, we really got into the weeds and the science of it with our sciencey guest, Mark. I want to thank him for showing up. This was great. He is definitely a guy that can spin a yarn. Anyway, Star Trek Beyond. It's an entertaining movie, I guess, if you don't think about it too much. It really, if you don't go into the weeds on all the world of Star Trek, I think there's a whole lot to dissect, like how we usually do it, like morally and whatnot with the different scenes and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's competently made, competently acted, competent special effects, but it's not a movie that I'll find myself going back to. I mean, unless I have to for the podcast, like I did. So that's my takeaway. What's yours, Daniel?
My take is I felt like this third version of the reboot was probably the worst of the three. I felt like there were so many plot holes and logical gaps that were extrapolated upon by Mark, that now that I've heard his take on it, and I'm like, yeah, this thing just doesn't work at all. And it seemed really weird to bring in the Beastie Boys. I mean, I kind of enjoyed it because it was harkening back to my childhood. It seemed like kind of this ridiculous mode of destroying the swarm. That swarm seemed like a super powerful weapon. They could have taken down anybody. They could have taken down the Borg with that thing. But I guess if the Borg knew to play some music, I guess I would solve it. Anyway, overall, yeah, I didn't really like the movie all that much. I don't know if they're going to make a fourth one. I know that Leonard Nimoy died, and then so did Anton Yelchin, who was Chekhov. So it'd be interesting to see if they're going to come back and try to do another one or not.
Yeah, I mean, they will. I mean, these movies make a lot of money, so absolutely they will. And Hollywood is the quest for serving the market, and if the market wants stuff like this, they will do it. I would do it, wouldn't you? I'd make this movie 10 times over if it kept making me millions of dollars. I don't care.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got a point there. I just hope that they keep Simon Pegg away from these.
Keep him away from the script?
Yeah. I mean, he's fine as Scotty, but not as a screenwriter in this realm, this genre. I think he was trying to put too many nods back to the original series in this movie.
Definitely that. Yeah, definitely did that.
They're kind of still a little ham-fisted.
Yeah, he played off the Spock and McCoy mechanic a lot, and that each different character had their own little things to do, which sometimes, I mean, you're dealing with an ensemble cast, that's what you do, but it seemed like it was kind of just retreading older stuff for me. So I guess these movies kind of walk the fine line between nostalgia and giving you something new. But for me, this one didn't work out. Not nearly as much as the first reboot movie did. And these movies aren't exactly my cup of tea anyway. So take that for what it is.
Yeah, indeed, sir. Well, I want to thank our guest, Mark Eerdorf of Science Via Markets, for coming on and giving us all of the ins and outs of wormholes and warp drives and all that stuff. That was really fascinating stuff, and I appreciate that he came on for that. If you guys are interested in checking out his work, go to scienceviamarkets.com. We'll have a link to that down below. Also, at actualanarchy.com, we have links for Amazon. We've got links for turbulence training. We've got links for Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom. And we always look for subscribes on the old YouTube. So if you enjoy our work, give us a comment, a like, comment, share, or even another comment. 3 comments. Anyway, it's late here. I'm getting tired. Run off the rails. My warp drive, my dilithium crystals, can't take it anymore. I think I got to close this one down. So thank you, Robert. And thank our audience.
You're welcome, Daniel. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks, my freedom babies. Everything you do contributes to a more free world. I appreciate it. You're helping me. You're helping yourselves. You're helping even the people that don't want your help, like the stupid statists that work against us all the time. But I appreciate it. So thanks a lot, and thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting the show any way you can and do. Thanks much.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.